How excited should you be about the long-term prospects from Zamir White and Aidan O'Connell? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can check her out on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. Go check out her awesome profile picture of a certain Dallas Cowboys tight end because she lost the bet last week. And also go check out her work at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down this disaster of a game between the Raiders and the Chargers, plus, as always, promotion, commotion. But, Kate, let's start with those Raiders. I want to start with Aidan O'Connell, who had his best game of his career, 20 of 34 for 248 yards and 4 touchdowns. Is there a chance that O'Connell could be the long-term answer at QB for the Raiders?
All right, Mr. Raiders Wire. This is where I'd love to get some of your insight on the organization. So obviously the team has a little bit of a Jimmy Garoppolo problem. And by a little bit, I mean, I don't know, like a 3-year, $72.75 million problem with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Is that good?
Now, that's not good, Marcus. That is bad. That is hashtag bad. So, I mean, he's got he's got two more years left on this deal. Plenty of dead cap tied into his position with the team, which means like the Raiders are going to be feeling the effects of this contract here for a while. How desperate would they be to move on? Like from a financial standpoint, knowing the organization, knowing that, like, I mean, Mark Davis has just lit money on fire for the last like 4 years. Is he going to get sick of it and just say, you know what, I need to get my money's worth out of someone and bring Jimmy Garoppolo back? Otherwise, like, maybe it is time to consider, Aidan O'Connell a potential buy, because I think he has shown that, like, if you're not gonna, like, he might be the better option to Jimmy Garoppolo right now. I don't know. Surprisingly, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this situation. The floor is very low.
All right, so this is my read on things. I know they scored 63 points in this game, but 4 days ago they scored 0 points at home coming off a bye against the Vikings. As exciting as that win was last night, we shouldn't overlook how bad things were just a week ago. I think what's going to happen, if I had to make a prediction, I think the Raiders are going to cut or trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Aidan O'Connell is going to slide into that number 2 role, and they're either going to draft or sign somebody to be the franchise quarterback. I still would bet that they draft somebody relatively early, and then just keep Aidan O'Connell as like a high-end backup. So as cool as this was to see him play this well, I would be shocked if he's the week 1 starter going into 2024.
I think that's fair. Looking at their draft position, they're going to be, they're not in the running for pick number 1 or pick number 2 or pick number 3. So maybe they get one of these like fringe, I say fringe, but one of these later guys. I don't know who's going to be available there. I haven't gotten enough far enough into my 2024 draft class, but
yeah, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, maybe one of those quarterbacks.
Okay. And we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Las Vegas Raiders. It's really hard to put, I think, dynasty stock into any of these players right now, just knowing the trajectory of this team, right? They are in the middle of a rebuild. They're on their way to starting. So when you look at current players on a roster that's in the middle of a clear rebuild where they're looking to blow this team up, you don't really know who's going to be there. Like it's very hard to predict who's going to still be on the roster and what the dynamics of this team under a new coaching staff with a full off season and a full NFL draft class ahead of them. It's a challenge to predict.
I will say this was a team just last year that really explored trading up to the number 1 pick. We've got multiple reports now that the Raiders they had conversations about trading up to that spot to draft a quarterback. Now, depending on who you believe, some people think it was Bryce Young, some people think it was CJ Stroud, but there was no doubt that the Raiders had interest in moving up for a quarterback. I think they'd have interest in doing that again this year. But Kate, I actually think they're more likely to go the other route and trade for a veteran. I don't think it's going to be Kirk Cousins just because I think the Raiders want to get somebody younger. I'm kind of circling Kyler Murray and Justin Fields as two guys that could potentially be options for them at quarterback, just because they're both young. They're both very talented. They're both very athletic. And I think they're both going to be available. So that's what I'm looking at. Maybe we'll see where they finish in the draft order. If they're inside the top 10, maybe that's when they do try to make a move. But as for Aidan O'Connell, I think he's just a stash in your deepest of dynasty leagues. And we'll see if he gets another opportunity. We'll see what he looks like in 2024. But as for him being like a long-term option, I just don't see it right now. Because going into this game, Kate, Antonio Pierce said on Wednesday, hey, we've got to figure out who's going to be starting for us at quarterback. Like there was reports that he had a super short leash going into this game, which kind of tells you everything you need to know about Aidan O'Connell.
I think that's fair. I appreciate the insight from Mr. Raiders Wire.
Let's go to Zamir White, who got his first start of his career last night. 17 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown. Also caught 3 passes for 16 yards in the receiving game. Kate, he could have had an even bigger day on Thursday because we saw Amir Abdullah get some work in the run game. Brandon Bolden scored a touchdown as a Wildcat quarterback. They threw the ball. Jacoby Myers threw the ball to Devontae Adams, like at the 2-yard line. Are you interested?
They were in full, like, screw it mode last night. And I loved it, actually.
Piling on. They threw 5 touchdowns yesterday, right? So Zamir White could have had an even bigger day. Are you buying Zamir White as a potential long-term solution for the Raiders?
I really like Zamir White. Now, here's the thing. So you look out, he's a second-year running back. He's still got 2 years left on his deal. Coming out of Georgia, like he's got the build, right? He's got that sort of stereotypical big boy feel, 6 foot, 215 pounds. He's 24 years old, doesn't have many miles on the tires. No. At all. 17 carries, 69 yards, and a touchdown. I like Zamir White a lot. My biggest question with him, I think, in terms of like dynasty value, is that I do think he's very limited as a receiver. He's got a ton of burst, had a 440 coming out of college, like has some concerning injury history, but he obviously is healthy at this point. I do think that there's some upside for him in terms of early down work. But my biggest question is like, is he ever going to have a true workhorse role where he's going to be involved in as a receiver? Heading into this season, he had totaled just 17 receptions dating back to his freshman year at Georgia. Like,
yeah,
he's not a pass catching back.
Nope.
That's not to say he can't develop there, but how much does that limit his potential to become a full-time guy? That's my biggest concern with Zamir White.
I'm right there with you. I think he's a really interesting add if you can add him for cheap. I mean, I'm assuming in most dynasty leagues he was even available on their waiver wire. I agree with you. I think what you're hoping is like David Montgomery here. Like if he can become a David Montgomery type of player with the Raiders over the next couple of years, you're thrilled with that. But I wouldn't expect him to ever be a guy that gets 22, 23 touches a game.
No, I think that's definitely probably the way to go is maybe buying low. Like what does it cost, right now for Zamir White? Like they're definitely not going to be bringing Josh Jacobs back. You might be able to, third round pick, fourth round pick, and you could have a team's RB1. And it's not to say that role might mean he is a fantasy RB1, but I do think he projects as an early favorite for goal line work,
Yep.
for early
Yep.
down work, and that could be valuable, in terms of just depth for your dynasty roster that comes at a pretty low cost.
All right, let's talk about the other side of the ball, the Los Angeles Chargers, who were an absolute disaster last night. Is it officially over for Austin Ekeler? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn just isn't another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have this many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within just 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, and many of them don't have the time or the resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is so quick and easy. They've even launched a feature that helps you write your job descriptions faster, making the process even better. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We wanted to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, let's talk about the Chargers here. Isaiah Spiller got the most work in the run game, 16 carries for 50 yards. And then it was Joshua Kelly, 5 carries for 22 yards. Austin Ekeler, 5 carries for 9 yards, 4 receptions for 29 yards in the passing game. Is it officially over for Austin Ekeler?
Oh, I hate this conversation. Marcus, we already kind of talked about our concerns with Austin Ekeler in a show. I think it was a couple weeks ago here. And we were saying it doesn't look great, right? But every single game that we watch for Austin Ekeler, it seems to look worse and worse. And I have to look at this game. The comments were on the wall that we might see a decreased role for Austin Ekeler. It does seem like they're starting to say, like, okay, we're obviously not bringing Austin Ekeler back. What else do we have on our roster? Let's get a look at Joshua Kelly, Isaiah Spiller, and see, like, what's our answer in the run game for the future? Because we know it's not Austin Ekeler. And Austin Ekeler's not giving them any sort of room to regret them looking elsewhere. I mean, you look at his efficiency across the board. Career low 13% missed forced tackle rate, career low 3.6 yards per carry. The worst he has ever averaged in his career is 4.3 yards per carry. So almost a full yard per carry less than what we've seen previously. Yards after contact per attempt, explosive runs, all of that is on the decline. And I mean, he's got it's really hard because so much of his fantasy value has been tied to his production, as a receiver, as a touchdown machine. And while I think his ability as a receiver is still there, it's still very much potent, I do wonder if he's losing a little bit of that juice. He is 28. The touches are racking up.
Yeah.
I'm color me concerned.
And I think there's just going to be a big shift in the way that the Chargers do things this offseason. I think they're going to move on from the GM. I think obviously they're going to move on from the head coach. I think Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator, is going to go elsewhere. And I just won't be surprised if you see the Chargers really hit the reset button this year. Maybe they move on from Austin Ekeler, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams, and they just say, hey, we've gone through all this. This is our run. It's over now. Let's look for the future. Austin Ekeler is a free agent after this year. There's what reason would you want to bring him back other than he's been a great player for you for the last couple of years? It feels very much to me like he's going to have to go somewhere else, and I just don't see him ever getting enough work somewhere else to become fantasy relevant. I think it's over.
No, I think it's over. And the biggest problem too is like it's not just that it's over with the Chargers, right? Austin Ekeler, you look at him again, 28 years old. He ranks 11th in total touches among active running backs. So like when you look at the pool of running backs right now, he's probably not at the top. GMs who are looking to maybe sign a veteran on a second contract or perhaps a third, you're not going to look toward these older veterans who are showing declining efficiency with these high touch totals. You're going to look for maybe some of these unfound gems, right? That maybe didn't get a ton of work because of situations, played backup, and just from a situational standpoint, it doesn't make a ton of sense for teams to be super aggressive in their pursuit of Austin Ekeler moving forward. So the problem's not just with the Chargers and his future there. I think it's just in general. And we know that Austin Ekeler has had some bones to pick with this running back pay structure. I don't think his play this season has unfortunately yielded enough results that he can really overcome that narrative right now.
No.
I have a lot of concerns. So let's talk about what you do with Austin Ekeler before we close out this segment. Obviously, I think we're both in agreement. You sell low if you can.
If you can, yeah.
If you can, but how low are you willing to go?
Would you trade Zamir White for Austin Ekeler?
Oh, Marcus, that feels wrong.
I'd take White. I just the arrows are going there. I hate to be this dramatic because I'm really not trying to be, but I think there's a situation where like Austin Ekeler signs with a team on like a 1-year minimum contract deal next year and is a third running back and plays 13 to 14 snaps a game. Like I think there's a real chance. I mean, look, this has happened over the course of history. Like these running backs that are this small really struggle once their bodies start to break down. If I could trade him for somebody who's on a rookie contract on a team that could potentially give him a lot more work, I would do it.
I have a conspiracy theory in my head that I'll say before we close out. I have a small, I don't think there's a non-zero chance that we don't see Austin Ekeler in the league next year.
Oh, I 100% agree.
If he does not get a contract that he feels is suitable, like he's already been so vocal about the lack of pay. And given that, like you said, he could get a very, very minimal contract. And for what he's already put his body through, I don't know that he would agree to those terms and to play on a contract that he feels is below him after what we saw him come out in support of last year. He's better than the next two players that I'm going to mention, but Leonard Fournette was without a team for the first 3 months of the season, signed on with the Bills. We haven't seen him yet, right? Has he been activated? I don't know if he's been activated from the practice squad.
No. Yet. Kareem Hunt was 27 years old this offseason, 27, and couldn't get a team. Now, it only after the Browns had a bunch of injuries that they decided to bring Kareem Hunt in, and look how inefficient Kareem Hunt has been. I just won't be surprised if that's the thing. It's all of a sudden it's September 20th and Austin Ekeler still without a team. Like that won't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying that it would necessarily be due to a lack of interest. Like I think even from a locker room perspective, you want a guy like Austin Ekeler on your team. Sure. But from an Austin Ekeler perspective, like what you put your body through on a day-to-day basis, and that's been part of your fight. Is it going to be worth it? And I don't know that the answer seems like it'll be yes. And this is me speaking. I am not friends with Austin Ekeler. I have no inside sources, but this is just me reading as a person who I consider having, relatively high emotional intelligence.
There's also the roster construction part of this. Like teams want their second and third running backs to be able to play special teams. If you're a 28, 29-year-old running back that doesn't do that, and you don't have the ability to kind of run between the tackles and be a short yardage back, and you're losing juice as receiver, your value drops pretty quickly in the NFL. So I'm hoping that we hear after the year, hey, Austin Ekeler, he was just never 100%. This high ankle injury really robbed him of all of his speed. He's healthy now. He's going to look great this season. I hope that's the case. But right now, Kate, it doesn't seem like that's where we're trending. It's pretty sad.
Yeah.
Oh, well. All right, let's do some promotion commotion. We need to have a little bit more. We need to be more positive now. Let's talk about some players that you can promote from your bench into your starting lineups in week 15 in playoff time right now. Let's get to it. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Whether or not your family gives gifts during the holidays, you get to define how you give to yourself. And the holidays are a great time to do that. So whether it's by starting therapy or going easy on yourself during the tough moments, or maybe treating yourself to a day of complete rest, remember to give yourself some love this holiday season. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty podcast. Every day on Monday's show, Kate and I are going to break down all of the action from week 15. So make sure you guys tune in for that. It's going to be another wild week of games. Cannot wait. But today, Kate, we're doing some promotion commotion. Who are you promoting from your bench into your starting lineups this week?
Let's talk about New York Giants second-year wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson. Come on
yeah,
down.
I love this. Love this.
Coming off a season-high 79 receiving yard performance in Week 14, it's going to look on paper like a really bad matchup. The Giants are headed to face the Saints, who have, generally speaking, throughout the season been a top 3 defense against fantasy wide receivers. But their biggest weakness this season has been in the slot with slot cornerback Alontae Taylor, who has given up a league-high 468 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns in slot coverage this year. You have Robinson, who leads the Giants offense with 37 targets out of the slot. He's caught, a good amount of those 277 receiving yards and a touchdown. I think this could be a really nice big time spot for him to continue building on that momentum from week 14.
I love it. I'm all in.
Wow, I never get the love from you. Wow, look at us. Look at us, Marcus.
Wan'Dale is just one of those players that I really believe in the talent. And every time the Giants give him the ball, good things happen. You watch that Packers-Giants game, and he might have been the best player in the field. Like, legitimately a good player. So 100% agree. Kate, I'm going to go a quarterback with you. There's a lot of quarterback injuries this week. You might have been without Justin Herbert. You could be without CJ Stroud. Very likely to be without CJ Stroud. I mentioned this guy last week, but I have no problem at all starting your guy, Mitch Trubisky, on the road against the Colts this week. Mitch Trubisky last week, as bad as it was, still scored over 20 fantasy points because of his rushing ability. The Colts just got shredded. I mean, absolutely shredded by Jake Browning. Kind of a must-win game for the Steelers. Now you give Mitch Trubisky 9 days to get ready for this game. It's in a dome. I think Mitch Trubisky can easily get you 21, 22 fantasy points this week.
I don't mind that. And Marcus, I'm not trying to be a homer at all, but I do want to point out too that Thursday night football game, this was a very short week, right? Kenny Pickett had his ankle injury on Sunday. Then they had to play on Thursday, and Mitch Trubisky, they didn't even have full practices for most of the week. So Mitch Trubisky had just like a day or maybe a day and a half of like actual practice with his wide receivers. Now you have a lot more time in the bucket to get some more reps. And I think that we might see a little bit more fluidity. I think even in the second half of that game, just from a passer standpoint, you saw him progress a bit. So I really like this, potential for a nice bounce back game with some bigger, more time to prep. Other quarterback plays, I want to give a shout out to Matthew Stafford, who I have ranked as my QB6 this week, going up against the Commanders. I'm going to close it out with a wide receiver who isn't like a sexy pick right now, but I do want to point out the fact that he's balling a little bit, and I'm going to throw him into my flex in a couple of leagues here. Wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. for the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, like, obviously their offense has been red hot, but Odell Beckham Jr. has been a big part of that. 7 or more targets in 3 of their last 5 games. He's had 3 touchdowns in that span. Finished as a wide receiver 20 or better in 3 of those games. I think up against the Jaguars, allowing a wide receiver 10 or more fantasy points in 17 instances this year. They are allowing the 7th most fantasy points per game to the position, tied for the 3rd most receiving touchdowns to the position. I think this could be a 90 receiving yard, 1 touchdown day for Odell Beckham Jr.
Starting to get more comfortable in the offense, and you can just see it even on the touchdown that he scored last. Oh yeah, he looks good.
Healthier. He looks good.
I love it. I think that's a fantastic call. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Again, on Monday's show, Kate and I are breaking down all the action from Week 15. Go check us out on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. We're free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy Saturday football, Sunday football, Monday football. It's going to be a great week. We'll see you back here right next week.